So Nicholas begins reporting Princess Beatrix is your elected Memphis boyfriend speaking and your elected American boyfriend speaking. Tonight is election night 2014, and as I've always expressed, I have always stood with the White House despite who's elected President of the United States. Now this guy Keith Olbermann actually announced when the president won election night a few years ago. So here's the unopened letter, of course, from the White House promoting my initiative, my agenda. I stand by all minorities who have been oppressed around the world, despite politics. I stood by the White House. I stood by who was elected the presiding officer of the United States of America. Despite politics, I stood by President Barack Obama and, of course, First Lady Michelle Obama. I did not stand behind them for political purposes, but for a higher purpose that minorities have been oppressed, all minorities, regardless if they're Jewish, Latino American, or what Chinese, Asian American, minorities have been oppressed around the world. And I stood behind the president for that issue. Above party politics, of course, I am a young Republican. I also stood behind the President of the United States because our sons and daughters do serve in the military and the armed forces. I stood behind the President for him to uphold our governments around the world. I stood behind the President of the United States because I believe those who serve in our armed forces should have a strong leader and should have people behind the president despite party politics. I also stood behind the President and Mrs. Obama for many purposes, also to bring world peace, and of course, as the White House Republican of the United States, I'm representing world peace, and I stood behind the initiative of former President George W. Bush with the unopened letter still from the former President of the United States. I stood behind him and his agenda as well regarding diversity with the White House. So for many years we have struggled as minorities around the world regarding equality, justice, and peace. And I stand for that, regardless of who is elected President of the United States. Nicholas Pegues stood with something that was solid as a writing Republican candidate for the United States Congress. Nicholas Pegues reporting. Princess Beatrix is this your elected American boyfriend speaking, and let me read out a letter from the First Lady of the United States. It's expressed, Dear Nicholas, I want to thank you for taking the time to write me in the White House. It means so much for me to receive warm wishes like yours, and I hope that you will know how much I appreciate your thoughtfulness. Over the past few years, I've had extraordinary privileges of receiving letters from people across our country and around the world. I have seen and heard firsthand the very best of the American spirit, and my family has experienced incredible kindness and warmth. The President and I share your hope and optimism of our shared future. And with that conviction, I encourage you to find new ways to improve your community so that we can ensure a better future for our children. I wish you the best, and thanks again for writing, Michelle Obama. I would also like the international community to be aware that after this letter has been written to me, Governor Bill Haslam yesterday stood with me as a young Republican. So Nicholas Pegues reported, CNN icon of Memphis. God bless America. God save the Queen. And I love the United States of America. Thank you and good night.